All right, to that battle royale, Charlie Gasparino, former Trump New York campaign co-chair Joe Borelli, and Conservative Review chief political correspondent Deneen Borelli. Deneen, what do you make of that? That there's still a lot of fighting and slogging to do. Phil Gramm was here earlier saying Republicans shouldn't be in a position of having to give ground on anything or feel ashamed of offering the rich a tax cut or any of this other stuff, that they've got to be on offense. What do you think?
Well, listen, I think we do need to lower taxes the best way that we possibly can. That will put more money in the hands of the consumers. They would spend more. And when you look at the high tax states, California, New York, New Jersey, for one, I moved from New York to California to Connecticut 2 years ago because of the high taxes. Taxes are a bit lower in Connecticut, but they're crazy there as well. Yeah. They're crazy there as well, but we were able to cut our property taxes in half, so that tells you something. But anyway, these politicians, local, state, they continue to raise taxes. People can deduct that burden, but there's no fight to reduce taxes. So if you put the burden on these politicians to do something about lowering taxes, I mean, that is what we really need to do, I think, for our country, for the good of the economy.
But I wonder how many, and Charlie and I were getting into this, Joe, that let's say there's 60 some odd Republican congressmen and women from such districts where this issue would come up across the very states that Deneen mentioned, and others, New Jersey, for example, who are going to have a tough time, you know, voting for something like that, unless the math can be proven that taking the general raised deduction is going to mean they get a bigger tax cut than would normally be the case.
Sure, and it will be a tough sell for places like New York City, Nassau County here, Connecticut, New Jersey, and I think Peter King's making the right case for his county, which is one of the highest tax counties in the country, if not the highest tax county. But I think Deneen and I share a name and a mind, because when you're talking about staying on offense, let's remember that these same politicians who are now bloviating about removing this deduction are the ones who are actually keeping in place the fact that these are the highest taxed state and local localities in the country. I mean, it's kind of a twofold.
That's a very good point.
It is a very good point. And if they want to be genuine, they would lower their taxes and reduce spending. New York State and New York City combined spend per capita 3 or 4 times what people in Oklahoma spend. It's not necessarily a tax problem. It's a spending problem.
But, you know, states like this one and others say they give far more to Washington than they get back.
It's been, and that's empirically true. I mean, by every model says New York taxpayers give a lot to the federal government, much more than Oklahoma. I will say this. It was music to my ears to hear Donald Trump go out there and forcefully talk about tax cuts in ways that he didn't do with health care. So he clearly gets this issue and the notion of giving more of people's money back to them. They spend more, economy grows. I mean, he kind of gets that, and, you know, as a free market guy, that's music to my ears. Here's the one problem that I have with this whole thing, and, you know, take the state and local tax deduction as an example. When Ronald Reagan did it, and you and I talked about this the other day, so this is why I can't believe they're freaking out now that, oh, there's opposition to the state and local tax deduction. When Ronald Reagan did his tax cuts, when he was giving it to Congress, when he said, okay, Congress, here's my plan, put it into law, 95% of it was thought out and hammered out and agreed to. Okay, there were a few things that weren't. We should point out that, you know, this is just the opposite. 5% of this is kind of agreed to, and 95% of this stuff needs to be worked out. So you're going to have battles over the state and local tax deduction. You're going to have battles over carried interest deduction. You're going to have a battle up, and, you know, private equity is also ready to go to war over the deduction on interest expense. I'm telling you, the lobby.
So it's not going to be easy.
This is crazy.
Well, Deneen, let me ask you a little bit about that. One of the things I think the president needs is what some of his predecessors have had, who had sweeping tax cuts, bipartisan support. It doesn't have to be off the charts bipartisan support for this president. A few senators will do it for you, because assume you're going to lose a couple of your own. Do you think that's important, that he reach out? You know, Joe Donnelly of Indiana comes up as someone who could be winnable, you know, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, but he needs those to cushion the blow of potentially losing a McCain or you know, Murkowski in Alaska or Collins in Maine. That is almost a given. What do you think?
Well, here's the thing with that. I mean, the Democrats do not want President Trump's agenda to be successful, because that means they're going to lose more and more seats across the country, and they will likely lose voter support as well.
But those who are in dangerous states or re-elections of their own, or in purple states, as they call it, they're the ones
they're concerned about getting reelected.
Would that seal the deal if he got those
It possibly could seal the deal, especially for those on the fence.
forget, people in some of these states that are at risk for losing a Democratic senator are states that are not high-tax states and are states that the majority of the 70% of Americans who just claim the standard deduction are living in. Those people who just claim the standard deduction, right off the bat, they get, boom, a doubling of their biggest tax reduction right off the charts. It's very politically difficult to try to go after the middle class when you voted against a tax cut that they can just see plain English in paper on hopefully a postcard, as the Trump administration is saying it will be on.
So how many Democrats are in the Senate who fit that? You got Manchin?
Those three.
Three.
North Dakota.
If we get three, we'll take it today.
There might be others. There might be others. I mean, Phil Graham alluded to others. I will say this, Charlie. I want to get your thoughts on this. A lot of people go back to the Reagan experience and all that. Keep in mind, the economy was in much, much rougher shape with the 81 tax cuts.
And he was much more popular.
It brought the top rate to 70 to 50%. But the one thing that was interesting about it is he defanged the boon to the rich argument by constantly framing it as, it's your money. I'm not going to delineate who gets to keep their money, who doesn't. Everyone gets a tax cut. And there wasn't this hatred of the rich that seems to permeate the discussion.
And particularly on the left.
Right. And I'm wondering how that factors into this.
I agree. The sales part is a big thing. You know, can Donald Trump pull Ronald Reagan and sell this thing? The other thing is Reagan was an incredibly popular president.
Yes.
Donald Trump is an incredibly unpopular president. I mean, he is. Whether I'm sure our viewers are going nuts because they all voted for him. But the reality is most of the country didn't.
Well, you remember Ed Rollins said what really helped Ronald Reagan was a little crass, but that assassination attempt, you know, garnered a great deal of sympathy and support and rallied the country in a way that he probably still would have gotten the tax cuts. I think Rollins was convinced he would have, but not by the margins he did.
Right. And what is the last thing that we remember Donald Trump doing, which was last week, getting embroiled in, you know, take a knee. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, these are different people. But
do you think in the end he'll get it?
Logic says no, only because they gave, as I said before, they gave.
But do you think he'll get it? Yes or no?
No.
Deneen?
I don't think so either.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I'm optimistic. They cannot come to the plate and strike out again. The GOP in Congress needs to deliver 100%.
I hope you're right.
I hope I'm right, too. I stand to benefit. We all stand to benefit.